Looking to buy a house and wondering, what should I not buy? Well, this is an important question. And as someone who's helped people buy and sell homes, these are some of the homes that you should never consider buying. Let's get started. So the next group of homes that I'm going to talk about that many people advise you to stay away from unless you know what you're doing are older homes. Now, older homes are definitely going to have outdated systems. There are homes that were built in the 1900s. Edison helped to bring electricity into the area. And they are typically in the most desirable areas. Over time, because of the expensive nature of these homes, many of them have been updated, but there are still some with outdated systems. They may have outdated galvanized plumbing, which could lead to rust. They may potentially break. A lot of the homes have outdated electrical systems. They may have lead paint, asbestos, and upgrading all of these systems is going to cost you a fortune. You have to be ready for extensive renovations and expensive upgrades if you go into one of these homes that have not been brought up to today's standards. You definitely need to have deep pockets. However, that being said, these homes are typically the most charming and most beautiful. And in my eyes, there's nothing more beautiful than an older home that's been brought up to today's living standards. Now, some of these older homes may cost a fortune, like I said, to retrofit. And on some occasions, these homes are purchased by buyers and they opt to knock them down because the land is so valuable and the area is so great, and they rebuild a brand new home in its place. But you can't replace the charm of the older home. So if you do not have deep pockets and are afraid of major renovation issues that may come up in the future, I would strongly suggest and advise against these. However, if you're looking for something that's about as strong an investment as any, these are the homes that are going to maintain their value no matter what the market's doing and continue to go higher no matter how things are going. And there's always buyers for these homes. These homes are one of a kind, they're historic, and the value and the location are well worth the risk taken. Again, if you have the money and can afford to fix up the homes. If I could afford it myself, that is where I'd be living. Now, the next type of houses that I would advise staying away from, or at least doing a tremendous amount of research, would be homes that are near nuclear facilities and electrical companies. And I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, some people are just afraid of buying a home near a nuclear reactor because obviously you look at a nuclear reactor and it's a nuclear reactor, right? Typically very safe. Here in Charlotte, we actually have two, one up by Lake Norman, one down south by Lake Wiley, some of the most expensive and beautiful homes and desired areas in those two spots. Lake Norman is hands down one of the most beautiful areas here. But it does have a nuclear reactor there. Some people are fine with it, and actually most people are fine with it. But whenever you're looking at a home that may be near something that you think may be giving you a second thought, I would do a good Google search on the area and check to see if there's any environmental concerns. Now, we talked about the electricity and electrical towers and all that stuff before, but after my parents sold a house on the flight path at Kennedy Airport, my parents in their wisdom moved us to an area, nicer home, was backing up to a power company, the Long Island Power Authority, called LIPA now, used to be called Lilco. Now, there was a tremendous amount of space between our backyard and the Long Island Lighting Company. But what my parents did not know was that land, which was owned by the Long Island Lighting Company, or LIPA as it's now called, they had no idea that 10 years later that the electrical company would infringe on all that property and take over all the land and come right back to our backyard, put all their trucks and tractors and machines and materials back there. And it was so much noise. Starting at 7 a.m. in the morning, you hear the rumble of the trucks. 7 days a week, you hear metal and steel falling and clanking. It was so loud. It wakes you up out of a dead sleep. Frankly, we just sold that house. We had to, and we didn't have an issue. I thought we were going to have a big issue with it. In addition, while there weren't electrical towers in back, there was a communications tower in the back of our home. And my dad developed an aggressive form of brain cancer and had absolutely no chance of winning. And my sister also had an issue with several types of cancer, which were found early, thankfully. So I don't know what's going on with the electrical companies or with those towers. I don't know if it's the water. I don't know if it's genetics. but all I know is there was a large freaking communications tower in our backyard, and I'm pretty skeptical of its safety. You know, they do all these studies and they say it's completely safe, you know, all these reports, but if you don't have to, why do it? Just do a lot of research, because I'm looking out for you. Don't want you to go through the same thing that my family has gone through. Don't want you to have that happen. I want you to avoid it if it's possible. Now, I would also strongly advise against and stay away from homes that have structural issues and foundation problems. These are an absolute fortune to fix. Cracked and uneven foundations are certainly major red flags. Structural repairs can be so costly and complex, and you never really know if it's been corrected completely. Sometimes you can notice a little bit of structural settling. That is not a big deal. Any little bit can be pointed up or fixed, meaning that the cracks can be filled in. But if it's major, that is scary. If you love the house, I would call in a structural engineer. I would call in everybody that you could. Again, you're going to have to risk money for the engineer, for the inspection, and the due diligence fee here in Carolina in order to get out if there's a big issue. Other states don't have that due diligence, so you can inspect it and still get out and just lose the money for the inspection. But if you're able to notice it, or a simple inspection is able to find a problem with the structure, run. Run as fast as you can. Run, Forrest, run.
Run, Forrest, run!
Homes that have a history of a fire, obviously fire, if it's a very small area and it's been rebuilt, usually not an issue. But if it's been a big fire and there have been some structural issues, you don't know how well those structural issues have been fixed. It's usually better if a house burns down to the ground, completely rebuilt. When it's done like that, obviously there's no problem. You don't have to worry about that restoration. A fire in a home can cause tremendous amounts of structural compromise, and it's not a house that you want. Even if you have an inspection, it may not be able to be picked up. A lot of times you don't have the opportunity to do a real investigation, especially in a very hot market. No pun intended. And sometimes it's very hard to tell if the house has been in a fire. Typically, they do not have to tell you in the disclosure form if the house has been in a fire and if it has been completely repaired. Now, in this case, and in a lot of cases, it's good to contact an insurance agent. An insurance agent may be able to get you what they call a clue report. A clue report is a report that can't be ordered by a dopey realtor like me, but can be gotten by an insurance agent. And this shows you whether or not money was paid out by an insurance company for repairs on the home. Whether it's a structural repair for a fire, water damage, hurricane damage, replace roofs, if a tree fell on the house, the clue report can be very, very helpful. Sometimes repairs are done, they're covered up, and you can't tell what's going on inside the house. This clue report will just give you some insight to dig a little bit deeper. Anything that's major that was repaired, I would avoid. Red flag, run away from the house. Homeowner associations, they can be great or they can suck big time. They maintain the neighborhood. They make sure that nobody steps out of place. They make sure people don't do funky stuff with their house painted purple or pink. Make sure they take care of their landscaping. They don't put boats on their lawns. You understand, it's a good thing for the most part. They can hand out tickets. They can tell you whether or not you can put something in front of your house and back of your house. You have to have approval if you want to put bushes. You know, it can be a pain in the ass. You can ask the neighbors prior to purchasing a home if the HOAs are a pain in the ass. Now, I know for certain there are certain areas here in the Charlotte metro area, and I'm sure other places in the country, that the HOAs are a certain pain in the ass, especially if you're building. They are specific as to what type of roof you're going to have, how high the roof is, how big the landscape is going to be. They're going to be very picky about your landscaping. They're going to be picky with your colors. They're going to be very picky with your setbacks. Now, I understand these are multi-million-dollar homes and they want to protect the neighborhood, but damn, they are such pain in the asses. Architectural committees can take your plans and throw them in the garbage. They can tell you what kind of roof line. It is very, very tough sometimes. I've had some clients walk away from neighborhoods because the HOAs were so freaking tough. They don't allow for any changes in color, in size, in shape. I mean, it's ridiculous. I had one client who wanted to purchase a home in a very exclusive neighborhood on a golf course and wanted to put a trampoline in their backyard, which was facing the golf course. Was not allowed. They would not allow them to have a trampoline. They had a pool, and I wouldn't want a pool right on the golf course if they could see me in a bathing suit. Nobody wants to look at me in a bathing suit anyway. But you have to know what you're getting yourself into. Some HOAs are great. For the most part, they're very good. But those HOAs in areas where you're building a custom house, I find are the most unreasonable and toughest to get through. So be very wary of the HOA, especially when you're building a new home. If it's a tract builder, typically it's not as much of an issue. More when you go into a fancy schmancy neighborhood. If it's a pain in the ass and you can't deal with it, walk away. On the positive side of the HOAs, or like in my neighborhood, lots of land, but no HOA. People are buying houses and using them for Airbnbs. People are using them to breed dogs. They got crap in the backyard, chicken coops, and I'm not like in a country, and there's really not much you can do when there's no HOA. So just be careful, just be knowledgeable. Sometimes the HOAs are great, sometimes they're tough, sometimes without them, it sucks. Other things to look out for here in North Carolina or anywhere else in the country. Here in North Carolina, we have disclosures that tell you about buried oil tanks. You have to say whether or not you have a buried oil tank, whether it's commissioned, decommissioned. It may not necessarily be a bad thing. However, you have to make sure they're decommissioned and they're not leaking. You have to test the soil. If there's contamination in the soil, the seller going to have to clean it up. You don't want to buy that house unless the seller cleans it up. If you're the buyer, I would not want to clean it up. It can cost an absolute fortune. And for the same reason, I don't want you to purchase a home that's too close to a gas station. Gas stations are notorious for having leaks of gas and oil. And if the gas comes over to your property and there are issues, you are going to be responsible for cleaning that up. I know someone who purchased a house near a gas station, and I'm just nervous. I've seen it happen before in businesses where gas stations are close to car washes. There's a leak in the gas station and a car wash has a big issue with having to clean up the land underneath. So stay away from anything that has kind of buried tanks that are leaking, or gas stations for that matter. Now, if you're looking at a home that is a known former drug home where they've been cooking up all kinds of amphetamines or other illicit types of drugs, obviously these are hazardous homes. You have no idea what's going on in the inside, and you don't want the contamination that exists from the residue from these drugs. An astute realtor may know a house that has had issues with remnants from drugs or a drug dealer house, but these pose serious risks. Sometimes it's impossible to tell, but then Google is your best friend. Go out and Google the address. See if any funky stuff has been going on in there. There has been funky stuff going on in there. I would run for the hills. And while you're at it, while I wouldn't stay away from a home because there's a sex offender in the neighborhood or close by, if you have children, it's something that I would definitely check out. There's a sex offender registry, and if you have kids and it's something that you're concerned about, I would not buy it. Now, when I was in New York and I first got married, I was looking at a home that I could potentially practice out of part-time. We saw a home that was a great house, good fit, but the realtor was phenomenal and did tell us that particular home was owned by a pediatrician and he had been charged with multiple sexual abuse cases in children. The house was obviously out. I couldn't even fathom the idea of purchasing a house like that. Sometimes you don't have time to do all this looking around, especially the way the market has been the last 3 or 4 years or so. But things are slowing down a little bit, not to the point where you still have tons of time when you find a good home. But my advice is to always visit homes at various times of the day and night. Again, the plains, check how the house is doing after rain if possible. I've picked up leaks that weren't picked up prior to rain, but have picked them up after, when the house had rain coming through the roof, down some of the sheetrock into the garage. So that was something we were lucky because we had heavy rains just prior and during the inspection. The backyard also had running water that was running into the crawl space. So we had a very good idea of what was going on. It was mild, but it's something that you need to know. Now, we were also able to see if there were things flooding in the backyard and things were running into the crawl space. Very little bit, very mildly, but obviously it was a potential issue. And when you get water in the crawl space, you've got to look for mold. That's a big issue. If there's a lot of it, you have to crush it. You have to get it out of the crawl space. It's an important thing to check for mold. Some mold is normal because of weather, hot conditions. Some new homes and new construction that my clients are building actually have encapsulated crawl spaces and have air conditioning vents that go into the area to prevent the growth of mold and keep the temperature down in the crawl space the same temperature as the house. So it prevents the growth of mold. But it's something that you definitely need to check for. Now, if you're house hunting, these are just some of the types of things that you need to look at and think of when you're purchasing a home so that you make a very sound investment. If you need assistance with finding the perfect home here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, or anywhere in the country for that matter, feel free to reach out to me, call or text. My name is Eli Magids. I am here to help make your process smooth and stress-free. Thank you for watching, and until we see each other again, next time.